They didn't have any problem with his demeanor and disposition because it's their demeanor and disposition. And it's just how they survived. It's who they are. So so that vote is likely going to be missed in most polling. Be tough to poll.
There's no doubt.
All the underlying trends, voter registration trends, presidential primary participation rate trends, and a 2019 election there in Philly showed working class Italians voting 5 to 10 points more for Trump than they did in 2016.
And for some reason, English nationalities are, and I would never have thought to even do this. This was a great idea to do. But English in Pennsylvania overrepresent themselves in polling than they are demographically in the state. We asked the census for help on this and everything. And they are not anywhere near, I mean, the vote, because the voter file can be a little bit vague when it comes to this kind of stuff. There's too many unknowns. So when we pulled up the voter file, ethnicity, right? It's pretty good.
It's a way to flag that mainline Protestant vote. For people who don't know, the word mainline came from the main line of upscale portions of Philadelphia. So when they say a mainline Protestant, they're literally referring to an upper crust area of Philadelphia historically.
And these are secular as hell, though.
That was probably because now they would be because 40 years ago they were respectable Methodists, respectable Presbyterians. These days, they're not religious disproportionately. I mean, there's still some that are, but most of this is where the decline has come amongst religious participation has been upper middle class, college educated people whose parents went to Presbyterian church but now don't. I mean, kind of like Trump, Trump's his own animal, but grew up in church, but it wasn't like he was quite going to church before he got elected. But he was when he was a kid, he went to church a lot. But because that was what respectable people did. Respectable people in places like the mainline part of Philadelphia, you went to church. That changed in the 1990s. And so the next generation, the younger boomers, the Gen Xers, they don't go to church, but they are disproportionately going to identify as college educated or post-college educated, but also disproportionately identify as English as their ancestry.
Yeah, and Robert, at least according to the census, they overrepresent in surveys by a factor of 5, and I absolutely see it. I see it. They're not that much.
They were the number one reason Pennsylvania polling was off in 2016.
It's a big deal.
They were constantly overrepresented in all the public opinion polling.
Italians and Germans in polls underrepresented. This is what we see. This is what we're, from their own data. Okay. Germans polls, and even to some extent Dutch, because they're so hard, but for the most part, English are your poll takers, and yet they only represent a very small share. And I actually have it. I'd be able to look it up. I got to look it up, but almost nothing, Robert.
So that super chat question, I wish I had that bet. Apparently, that's why I got to sneak into Ireland. Apparently, yes, if you can get at 5-1 Trump to win Ohio, Iowa, Florida, North Carolina, and Georgia, yes, take that.
Oh, wow.
That's a 50-50 proposition in my view. And again, like normally in sports betting, you cannot parlay correlated events. So like, let's say but in political betting, you can, because they don't recognize how correlated they are. And what I mean by correlated is, if Trump wins Iowa, he's going to win Ohio, he's going to win North Carolina, he's going to win Georgia, he's going to win Texas. Okay.
Iowa has traditionally voted to the left of Georgia for many, many years. It was only Trump's.
All of those states, in fact, substantially to the left. So if Iowa's in, then Ohio's in. And if Iowa and Ohio in, Georgia, North Carolina, Texas are in. And apparently you get 5-1 on that. What a sucker bet. Man.
I didn't see it, but I'll tell you what, I had somebody basically give it, not give the whole thing, but tell me what Ernst's internals showed that she was up by a hair, not a lot, and she's lagging Trump, which means they probably are showing her with a 1 to 2 point lead, and Trump with like a 4 to 6 point lead, which I think is bullish. But
you'll remember this because it's the first time you were modeling. It's just like 2014. Remember, Ernst was supposed to lose until that very last poll came out.
Bradley. Yeah, that's right. And by the way, that was one of those races. He had a scandal, but it was like they were trying to protect him, and it didn't look like it was going to do anything. +4s, +5s were routine, and then she did get one good poll. The final by Seltzer was a good one for her.
Correct. That was the only one, and it wouldn't surprise me if that happens this time. I'm curious. I will be watching how Seltzer polls Iowa late, because also people forget when she was polling for Bloomberg in 2016, her polls were way off in a lot of places, and her polls in Iowa only really sort of broke late for Trump. So let's see. Now, she normally wants to maintain her reputation, so I think if she gets data that points towards Trump, that she will actually report that. My guess is her last poll shows Trump by 2 or 3 in Iowa.
I think that's a good guess.
And that's why I'm telling people, go ahead and bet Trump Iowa now. I think the odds go up that Trump will win Iowa as some of this information comes out this week. Same with Wisconsin. If the Marquette was +6 for Hillary, I think they'll be +5 for Biden. But if they're not bigger for Biden than they were for Hillary, Trump's winning Wisconsin.
Yeah, because look, I applaud them, Robert, for doing what they are doing, which is releasing a distribution map here. This is where we, or at least they did that last time I looked. It was Biden +3 or something, Biden +4. They were Hillary +6, right?
All the way through. And at times it was bigger. The YouGov statewide polls were all bigger for Hillary than they've turned out for Biden so far.
And yeah, YouGov is they massacred themselves too in 18, folks. I mean, people stop DMing me, YouGov. All right. I just, and at this point, stop DMing me anything except for like you people, that I trust and respect. And because really, I have to keep my head in the game at this point. It was like I told you guys before, at this point, there's a lot of pressure. I don't like to look at anything but what the data tells me. And that's it. I mean, that's how I've always rolled. And that's how I'm going to continue to roll. So bombarding me with DMs, while I thank you for it, showing me other pollsters, especially pollsters I don't, particularly love.
The 3 media pollsters that were close in 2016 or closer than the other media pollsters in 2016 all changed their modes for 2020.
Yep.
So USC completely changed their mode, so they actually have a heavy Democratic bias.
7 to 8 points.
In 2016, they weighted it by the 2012 response, and they included deliberately rural working class voters that polling had traditionally missed. They scrapped both of those for 2020. The YouGov, their national polling, not their statewide polling, but their national polling weighted by the 2012 result. That's why they stayed stable. That's why they stayed closer than other groups. They completely scrapped it for 2020.
That's right.
IPD and TIPP used to be just a phone-based pollster. Because of the pandemic, they shifted to an online model. They've decided to stick that. I mean, they still have partially phoned, but and here was the bigger problem I had with their mode change. They went to targeting younger millennial voters with their online method. So it's like one thing if you're trying to really get a group that you can't get by phone to get by online. It's another thing to, if that's your reasoning as a whole, I wouldn't use that reasoning, but just let the mode find those people themselves. By using the mode to enhance a particular group, you were going to get a shift, and that's what's happened. So none of those polls will be as reliable. None of those polls will show you what they showed in 2016 because they all have different modes and methods, and their modes and methods.
Yeah, they've totally changed.
Bias. Right.